Russia, nukes in space, and UFOs. Let's discuss. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, so we may know what the big drama was with Mike Turner in that whole situation. Let's give a listen.
In space, multiple sources are telling CNN tonight that the U.S. has new intelligence on Russia's efforts to deploy a nuclear anti-satellite system in space. So this actually comes after the House Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Turner today raised the alarm. He announced he's made information concerning a, quote, serious national security threat available to all members of Congress to review. Now, keep in mind, if nukes were launched at the U.S. from space, they would be undetectable. And this news gives ominous context to the fact that one of Putin's mouthpieces floated this very idea on Russian state television 9 months ago, as found by Russian media analyst Julia Davis.
Okay, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but I will link to that video and you can watch it at your leisure. Nukes in space. Is Russia putting nukes in space? The government has a long history of using Russia as a scapegoat, unfortunately. They've also used Germany as a scapegoat, notably with the Hal O'Donnell situation, where the former director of Area 51, Hal O'Donnell, back when EG&G was running Area 51, he told George Knapp there was a live being there, and there were alien bodies recovered from Roswell. Well, then the Men in Black got involved and made him recant that story and tell everybody that, nope, it wasn't aliens, it was actually victims of Joseph Mengele. If I'm saying that name right, the notorious Yahtzee German. So, the U.S. has a long history of using scapegoats, whether about UFOs or not. So, is that what's going on here? Or is there a real threat from space from Russia? They're saying anti-satellite weaponry. Well, why do you need a nuke to take out a satellite? I don't get that. Clearly, if they're putting nukes in space, I would think that it might be aimed at Earth, but I could be wrong. But what does this have to do with UFOs? Well, there are many accounts of UFOs intervening with nukes or with our nuclear technology. There's a famous incident where a UFO shot down a test missile, a test ICBM missile that had a dummy warhead on it. Many people believe that the beings will intervene if there is nuclear conflict. This gentleman is USAF Colonel Ross Diedrichson, the same military rank as UFO whistleblower David Grush. And here is what he had to say.
And that is their major concern, is to preserve the integrity of the Earth, because it affects their own system. Well, there was one incident when we exploded a nuclear weapon over the Pacific, and this was in about '61, I believe. And the consternation that it caused, because it shut out communications entirely over the Pacific Basin for a number of hours, in which no radio transmission was available at any time. And this was very significant, and of course, this was one of the things that the extraterrestrials, later I learned, were highly concerned about, because it affected our ionosphere, and in fact, spacecraft were unable to operate because of the pollution in the magnetic field of which they depended upon. The very end of the 70s or the early 80s, we attempted to put a nuclear weapon on the moon and explode it for scientific measurements and other things, which was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials.
And what happened?
They destroyed the weapon before it got to the moon. With reference to the incident which our government sent a nuclear weapon for explosion on the moon's surface, it was tended to, as I understand it, to assess some scientific data and reaction and so forth. The idea of any explosion in space by any Earth government was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials, and that has been demonstrated over and over.
Yeah, so, is his information accurate? Is he on the level? Well, I mean, he's a very credible guy, but that idea is backed up by a whole range of encounters between UFOs and nukes. Here's a documentary, UFOs and Nukes, The Secret Revealed. Here's a book, UFOs and Nukes, Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapons Sites by Robert Hastings. And so you get a lot of this stuff. And then you have, Edgar Mitchell saying that the beings prevented nuclear war. I love Edgar Mitchell. This is from J-Post. In that conversation with the Daily Mirror, Edgar Mitchell, raised the astonishing claim that aliens were responsible for preventing a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union during the peak tension of the Cold War. And of course, we're all familiar with Robert Salas, a former Air Force ICBM launch officer, and his encounter with an orange flying disc that switched off 10 warheads at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967. And that's not an isolated account either. They have done similar things like that before. They are heavily interested in our nukes and our nuclear capabilities in technology. There's a theory that that's why they're drawn to our aircraft carriers, our nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. They also show up a lot at our nuclear power plants. So what's going on there? Well, obviously we don't know. There's a lot of speculation. A lot of people think they do know. Some people think they're worried about the planet and, how our nukes and our nuclear capabilities could negatively impact the planet. Some people believe that they're feeding off of the nuclear energy. But if that were the only reason, they wouldn't be shooting our missiles out of the sky and maybe even preventing nuclear explosions on the moon, if that story is accurate. So if Russia did put nukes in space, would the beings intervene? Well, supposedly they've done that before. Of course, they've also caused tension before. Just as they shut off our nuclear capabilities at Malmstrom, they triggered the ICBMs in Russia in a similar but opposite event, sparking this countdown to launch. And it got right up to like the last second of the launch. We were about to have a nuclear war, and then the UFOs shut them off, fortunately. So they were turning our nukes off and turning the Russians' nukes on. Were they trying to illustrate some sort of point? This is, the dangers that you face with this technology. In our case, what it might feel like to be paralyzed, and what, in their case, what it might feel like to actually trigger World War III. Here's an article from Jerusalem Post talking about that very incident. Russian fighter jets once fired at possible ET life forms after a pair of UFOs nearly caused World War III to break out, according to sworn testimony shared to Congress and obtained by Fox News. The testimony was given to George Knapp, an award-winning Las Vegas-based journalist. We all know George. According to Knapp, there was a time when the Russian military actually deployed fighter jets to fire on UFOs following an incident that nearly pushed the world into a globe-spanning nuclear war. Thanks, UFOs. How did UFOs clash with Russian fighter pilots, take over an ICBM base? In the testimony, Knapp said that the Russians had carried out what may have been the largest ever UFO investigation in history, spanning a decade in the entire breadth of the Russian military echelon. He said he had spoken with a Russian military official, Colonel Boris Sokolov, who said there had been no less than 45 different incidents where Russian fighter jets had clashed with UFOs. Let me get rid of some of these windows there. With Russian jets crashing in 3 of these incidents, resulting in the deaths of 2 pilots in clashes with UFOs. And that's happened in the U.S. too, where it is. That's also happened in China. One incident that really raised alarm bells, though, was at a Russian ICBM base in Ukraine. According to Sokolov, the UFOs somehow took control of the launch system. UFOs appeared over the base, performed astonishing maneuvers in front of stunned eyewitnesses, and then somehow took control of the launch system. The missiles were aimed at the U.S. and were suddenly fired upon. Launch codes were somehow entered, and the base was unable to stop what could have initiated World War III. Then just as suddenly, the UFOs disappeared and the launch control system shut down. Yeah, really alarming stuff, right? So, I think that may have been a message from the beings. Don't play with this if you're not prepared to use it, and maybe you shouldn't be playing with it. But, that's just, one read on it. Until the beings tell us what they're doing, we just don't know. But it does give me some hope that if there were a nuclear war, that the beings might intervene, if not to save humanity, at least to save the planet or at least protect it. However, I am reminded of an experiencer who interacted with the beings, and she was told that if the beings ever needed to intervene to prevent something like World War III, then humans would relinquish control of the Earth. That the beings would feel at that point they had to step in and directly oversee our day-to-day existence because we could not be trusted. So let's not have nuclear war, guys. Let's not have any form of devastating war. Again, we don't know for sure if the Russian story is true or if they're just using Russia as a scapegoat, as has happened in the past. But whatever the case, nukes in space, probably not a great idea. Nuclear war, definitely not a great idea, for obvious reasons and for reasons that we may be possibly, if that story is true, relinquishing control of the planet. But those are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. Smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Join me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, links below. Love to see you guys there. If you wanted to support Cosmic Road in an even bigger way, grab a coffee mug or a t-shirt in the merch store, or become a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. Also, channel members frequently get to see videos hours ahead of everybody else. Meanwhile, there are plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out. Oh, and thanks to Chris and Martin for the links. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.